everyone. This is the first ever edition of Perspective, and I think it was a necessary podcast because I wanted a safe space for men and women to come together and just talk about the different experiences we go through living in this quote-unquote man's world, right? Because sometimes we have those conversations, but they don't really amount to much. Hence the word perspective. So we'll open up our purses and share all our experiences. And the men, please feel free to chime in. At the end of it, if you feel moved and you feel like you've unlearned something or learned something, you can take a photo, post it on your Twitter, your Instagram, and say, I have perspective. That'll be your way of taking a pledge. So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce my very awesome panel. It was weeks. It took weeks to come up with the names. Like I was trying to figure out who do I put on this? Who can really be part of this dynamic conversation and be unapologetic with their opinion. And so obviously the first person who, when I mention unapologetic in opinions, that comes to mind is my best friend, Valerie Lwile. So she is a media director, but she's also a published author now. And yeah, so she's going to be one of the panelists today, guys. So you can give her a warm round of applause. It's not a game show. And next we have Scheaffer Okore. I followed her on Twitter a lot. I loved her opinions. She was very frank with them. And then instead of meeting in Kenya, we met at a conference in New York. And that's when I was like, oh my God, you're Scheaffer, I know you. And our friendship started off there and then blossomed in Johannesburg. And now finally we're doing something iconic in Nairobi, Kenya. And so I'm glad that Scheaffer is here with us today. She is quite a lot of things. But one that is a recent one, and we must celebrate her for it, is being appointed to be on the Goalkeepers Advisory this year. That was a couple of months ago. So we're happy to have you, Scheaffer.
Thank you so much. My M-Pesa is open.
We also have, because listen, we wanted to make this a safe space for men as well. And speaking of Twitter, but I don't know if you saw him on Janet Mbugwa's latest show, Here and Now. He was one of the guests on there and was very, very honest about his life experiences, his opinions. And that's who he is, in front and behind the camera. Mariga Thoithi is the next panelist, guys. And last but not least, someone who probably has quite a few of my radio secrets. Do not know why I've given him a mic today, because we started this radio thing together at 1FM, and our salos used to come on the 15th.
After
we
begging.
Were there in the,
After begging. Yeah.
We would have, no, this is so true. We used to have bread and soda in the boardroom. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Imagine, guys. So yeah, we come from far.
While doing our debriefs and reviews, yeah.
But he is now exploring the world of photography, and he's really good at it. So if anybody needs pottery, it's Marcus is the guy for
Shucks,
you.
thanks. Gosh.
So
I accept all M-Pesa and old notes as well, especially now.
So this first episode, I thought it was important to take a look at some of the headlines that we've seen this year only. And one that caught my attention on the 18th of February, happened in Kaboi Technical College. And a female student, she's a first-year student, was murdered by a male student because she refused his advances. So basically what happened, the girl who was 21 years old, they were all in the dining hall, you might call it, and they were lining up trying to get food. It was about lunchtime, and he grabbed a knife and he stabbed her to death, all right? He stabbed her they say she was attacked with a kitchen knife and stabbed several times in the chest and the neck. Because why? Because she refused his advances. So reading that story, and there have been quite a few of them, not only this year, but there have been quite a few of them this year, I thought it was necessary to peel back and try and figure out, okay, where did it all begin with, right? There must be something that we're letting happen or we don't mind happening before it gets to that. And so that's what we're going to do in this episode. But I wanted to start with Val and Scheaffer. And by the way, this is an open podcast. Your voices can be on here. I know you have more of a voice than me today. So we'll have a roving mic. In case you feel something burning that you want to chime in with, feel free to do so. So Val and Scheaffer, and if there's any other woman in the audience who feels they want to contribute to this, because of such stories, right? The femicide stories are just too many. Has it affected how you as Kenyan women relate with Kenyan men?
I'd say yes and no. Yes, because this is recent. As in, the events are not like they've been happening for a very long time. So, of course, they're in our mind and we've been thinking about it, etc. But why I'd also say no is because for a very long time, we've been told that as women, we are the ones who are responsible for the men's reactions. So that's why you'll find, like, if a woman is violated, either physically or sexually, one of the first questions that we tend to ask is, what did you do? It's never what the guy did. It's what did you wear, or did you say no? You could have been nicer about it, etc. So I don't know if now men are just, they're tired, they've spazzed out or whatever it is, because we've been telling them no for a very long time and it's always been our fault. And yeah, but I'm not sure why now it's now become, the femicide is on the rise. I don't know, maybe that's something we can delve into as we go along.
I think. Okay, first, I just needed a glass of gin. No, it's for real. Church. I think for the first time in millennia, men have realized that women mean no when they say no. And they're not taking that, and they don't understand how that is humanly possible, right? Because, good example, a guy meets me, they like me, whatever, right? They start coming to my office. And I've told him, why are you coming here? Because men are socialized to believe that respecting when I tell you, no, I don't want you here, is being weak, is not being, aggressive, or not going after what you want. So for the first time, women are saying no, and they're meaning no, and they're unrelentlessly saying no again. So then what do? When the entire world, and I say this because it's a global problem, is already accepting the fact that you should be aggressive, you should go after what you want, and how dare she say no? I mean, there was a lady who actually returned money because there was an argument about, oh my God, you know what? She's taking money from me, so then I have right to this transactional heteronormative relations where a man gives you money, so apparently they own you. And she returned the money, and then this guy gets on a bus and goes to Mombasa and stabs her, right? I mean, it's madness first. And then it is realizing that we've come to a place where it is no longer women to talk about this, it is men. Like, ask yourselves, why are you killing us? Plain and simple. Why? Because even if you bought me the continent of Africa and labeled it Scheaffer's continent, right? You still don't own me because you never own a person. And then that's the conversation that we need to start having, right? Where you don't own anyone. Even if you marry them, you don't own them. There's nothing like owning a person. So how is it that it's just right now that we have all these cases of men who are just out here to kill women? Because they're not mad, they're not crazy. It's not a mental case. It's just the thing of, I own you. I have paid my due in this thing. And a man paying a due in relationship and a man paying a due in relationship with women is investing materially, right? So then I have bought you drinks, I have bought you chipo, I have bought you whatever it is that now they buy for people, and then now I can take your life. And unacceptable. So it's just the fact that for the first time, women are actually saying no and meaning it, and men are realizing, oh, she's not joking. So it's not those ones of, oh, no, and I mean yes. No, it's actually saying, no, this is bullshit. I don't want you here. And then he feeling like, but I am going to be here, even if I have to kill you.
Because when you read these stories, does it make you feel like you have to take a few more precautions as a Kenyan woman? Did it change anything for you guys?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, and the hatred alone that I get online for just defending and holding space for women is crazy, right? And I remember the day when Ivy was murdered, and then I said, stop killing women. And the number of people who came to tell me that I should die, and the number of people who came to tell me the next time I use a cab, my cab guy should make sure I don't turn up alive at home, right? And these are people who are not afraid to say these things, right? And then you're imagining that you're this face that people can recognize, and then you don't know them. So when somebody says this to someone else, what are they saying? Literally, right? So they're saying, somebody go out and kill that bitch for us, because somebody said that on Twitter, And it's not child's play. So of course I'm scared. I mean, why would I not be? If somebody can kill someone in broad daylight, and then people will come and say, oh, she must have owed this guy something. We are trying to rationalize murder. Like, why would I not be afraid?
True. And so to the men in the audience, has it changed anything for you guys? Are you more aware of what's happening and what women are saying? Has it changed anything at all?
It did. I think there's a thing about knowing that there's a problem, and there's a difference in knowing how big that problem is, right? Because we have conversations around patriarchy, around violence, around gendered violence, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. But then you hear one murder, then the rest, then the next, and the next, and the next, and suddenly it hits you as to how big the problem is. And the fact that, as Scheaffer was saying, this has nothing to do with mental health problems, right? And these are not extraordinary men in any case, right? They're not different. These are my brother, my uncle, my father, my friend. These are the levels of people. Because one of the biggest fallacies I see, people a lot of times make it a class difference, right? They say that, it's a younger men problem, it's a poorer men problem. No, it is not. In fact, people go through violence at all. Men can be violent at all levels, right? Finances do not dictate the level or the lack of violence. It's helped me see quite a bit of it, but the problem is I've realized online is that it sparked quite a bit of outrage. And not even outrage of women being killed, it's outrage at the fact that it's being reported all the time. In fact, now the reaction is that everyday girl child. It's become an actual interesting problem that doesn't exist because, women are being killed. Having outrage over the reporting of that is really ridiculous on its own. Yeah.
So one, it's made me a lot more aware of, I wouldn't say everything, because with every passing day, with every passing conversation, I'm learning more and understanding a couple of things that I had ingrained in me before that I need to actively change and flip and actively start thinking about. One of the things that happened is, as that very conversation was happening, Scheaffer, I think Mariga, I saw you put something up. I posted something. I saw a couple of men as well speak and retweet and share what they think and saying, really, gentlemen, guys, we need to start taking accountability for our own actions, our thoughts, how we think. In fact, it starts with how we think. We need to start taking accountability for that. Then that translates into actions. We share those, and I actually today I went through my posts from that time, and the contrast was very stark. That, as you say, that there are quite a number of people that quite literally threatened your life. Not one said anything in that regard to me. And the difference begins there. The fact that the two of us can say the same thing and the reactions are vastly different. One person, their life is being threatened. Mine, it's a lot more tame. It's, oh, you're just looking for sympathy and da, 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 da. I will not go in that direction. However, you get where I'm going, yes? Two vastly different reactions. One person's existence is fundamentally being threatened, and, well, my masculinity is being questioned, but really don't care. Then comes the question of, fine, masculinity. Then what does that mean? Because then it becomes a matter of, am I defining, because I feel like a lot of this is me wildcarding it, and I completely accept that I could be wrong on this. A lot of what we have as masculinity is based on achievement. It's based on tick box, tick box, tick box. It's do this, get, transaction, get, do this, tick box. And we haven't a lot of times understood that life is just a little more complex than that. And we haven't, and I know this will attract so much attention, we haven't grown up. We really haven't. We've stuck to, there's this thing my father did as a child, when I was a child, not when he was a child, when I was a child, where he said, so I wanted a bike. I wasn't doing too well in school. This story may sound familiar to a couple of us. I wanted a bike. I wasn't doing too well in school. So it became a trade. It became a do better, get to top 5. And then you'll get a bike. Okay? So it became a transaction. It's not about how much money is needed, or sometimes you don't get things in life, or da-da-da. It was achieve, get. Top 5, get bike. And that's the kind of mentality, unfortunately, that a lot of us have grown up with. Do, get. So when you come to a space now, when you're do, not get. What? Yeah.
Oh my God. I've never had it broken down like that from the male side of things, which is quite interesting. Because on my end, personally, when I'd see all of these stories, I just thought they're being reported more. Because I knew they were already happening.
But a part of that is true.
Yeah, but then I also felt like if you talk to any Kenyan woman, at least one point in their life, they will tell you that if they were going somewhere, how they went there, what they wore, what time they would go there, who they would go with, was probably dictated with how safe will I be.
Can I give you a good example?
Yeah.
Like right now, I've already called the cab guy I trust and told him I'm at K1, I'm done at 8, come and pick me up. Like, that's how scary it is.
Yeah.
And even on the taxi app, so Uber, Taxify, Little, whatever, I literally had to change my name. Because there was a time I was like I didn't care, right? Because as far as I was concerned, I was just like Scheaffer, the noisemaker, blah, right? I'm fine. But then there's a time I called an app, so I can't even say which app, and then this guy calls me back as they call and ask where you are. And then I say, hey, I'm at this building. And then he says, okay, I'm coming there in 5 minutes. And then he hung up. Then he calls back again and said, wait, you're Scheaffer Okore from the news? And I said, yeah. Oh my God. Let me just hurry up and come and get you. Hey, I must meet you today. Do you know that is how I logged out of that app and installed, like I almost threw away my phone?
Yeah.
Because you have no idea who this person is. You have no idea what their intentions are. And then tomorrow, if anything happens to me, I will be blamed. Like women are blamed even when we die. You are told, can you prove why you needed to live?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Even when you die. And that's exactly what happened to Ivy. Like her mother, who was supposed to mourn the death of her daughter, was busy, because of us, and I say us collectively, was busy defending why her daughter needed to be alive. Like, that is how sad it is. Like, even when I wear whatever, it doesn't matter. Even if you turn into a ghost and a male ghost finds you, they'll be like, why are you ghosting near us? Like, it's a mess. Anyway, continue.
No, but I love that you brought up that point, because I wanted to talk about unwanted advances. And women, you can just shout or clap if you've ever experienced unwanted advances. Right? Right? So I remember a year or two ago, I had the same setup with girls in Campo, and they were telling me the things they do to make sure that they don't get any advances. So they would dress down. If they're going into town, they would dress in a certain way. That maybe it would be more jeans and sports shoes, not because they're scared there's going to be a riot or kanjo or any of those things, because they needed to run in case they rejected unwanted advances and the guy got aggressive. So this girl's morning routine is wake up, shower. When she opens her closet, it's not, ooh, I want to wear this. It's, hey, I'm going to Tao. Where are my sports shoes? Where are my jeans? You know what I mean? But for the guy, it's, I'm ready to go to Tao, right? So I just wanted to know, what are some of the things that we do to ensure that we don't have a situation where we're getting advances from a guy and we have to say no? So for example, if you walk around with earphones and you know there's nothing playing, especially when you're passing a construction site, just clap. But what are some of those things that we do on a daily? As Kenyan women, this is how we're trying to protect ourselves.
Okay, for me, hello. For me, typically I have resting bitch face. It's just my thing. In fact, even I don't get hit on by people I would like to hit on me because my face is just like, stay away. But when I'm going somewhere and it's precarious and I'm not very sure what it is, then I dial it up. I then have, I like to call it resting bitch face on steroids. And I probably, to the extent I probably look like a Disney villain, I am just like, fuming. If someone turns and looks at me, the eyes I give them, some people honestly go like, and they keep moving where it is they're going. And it helps. It works for me. It's so unnecessary. And the way you see town is also, it's a problem for women. The CBD for women is just, like, I like to say, probably not a very nice thing to say, but I like to say when I'm going to town, I dress like poor. So I don't attract, nobody looks at me. They don't say, hey, that babe over there looks nice, and we go say hi. I do as dressed down as possible. This ugly ass dress I have that reaches here, and it's velvet, as in it's really ugly, with my ugliest shoes, and I don't even put on eyebrows that morning. I'm like, don't bother me.
And it's something you do consciously, knowing that I don't want the attention because I don't want the aggression that comes with me rejecting that attention.
Yes. For me, my issue is, I don't have a problem, because you see sometimes what happens is if you ignore, they tend to insult you, which I don't have a problem. I just ignore you because I'm like, you'll shout here till you're turned blue in the face, but trying to prove that your dick is bigger, like I really don't care. You can go on and on. But what happens, you'll find some people then they start to get physical. Like they'll shove you or something, and that's when that's when it gets scary. Yeah.
You know, I think I do exactly that, but I have a town attire. So no, for real, like I'm not trying to die, guys. Hey. So I wear all black when I'm in the CBD, right? So I'm trying to look like the most physically fit human being because I've never been to an actual gym, right? But then, of course, I know, like for me, the thing that breaks my heart is not even the guy who comes to attack me or the guy who shouts my name because they can recognize me, but it's the guys around him who do absolutely shit about it, right? Like the ones who are watching, the ones who are using this as a fucking spectacle. And yes, I curse. But those guys, those are the ones that I look at and I'm like, bless. Because I don't know how me being dehumanized and me being made to feel like I don't belong and me being treated like a lesser person, like me being othered in public is for your consumption. Like what gratification are you getting from that? Like even I don't enjoy, this is why I don't even enjoy boxing. Because I don't even understand why people are fighting, right? But then that's me. So even when people are physically fighting in CBD, or like somebody is being roughed up, even if they're a thief, I'm like, hey guys, we can actually do this better. We can just hold him well. We don't have to pull his trousers up his ass like this. We can do this more better, right? So then imagining, because there was a day I was literally watching someone in front of me in my all black, looking like I'm a gangster and all this. Like all I needed was like an AK-47, which I didn't have. But then I was watching this guy come next to this woman who has just walked out of an ATM. Then I don't know, should I shout? Will this raise attention to me too? How will this help? Like I have no idea what to do. But then the guys around him were like, oh, madam, this guy wants to talk to you. Meanwhile, she doesn't know who this guy is, right? And then she turns around and this guy puts his elbow, like his arm around her neck and whatever. So I'm there like, guys, somebody with energy, do something. Like somebody who can completely demobilize this guy. And everybody was fucking watching. And I was like, how inhuman can you be to watch this? Those are the people that I have problems with, right? So it's not even the person who attacks you. Let's say the person who attacks you is an attacker. That's what they've chosen to do. But what about us? What about the men who actually watch? It's like walking into a bar, and then a guy will know that you've just walked into a bar because they can see, oh, that's the new person who just walked in. And then they can see someone else going to talk to you, and you're like, no, please, I just came here for my drink. But they're just next to you. They don't care. I mean, wow, Mariga, who raised you?
My mother.
No, but it's so true. And we have a roving mic in case anybody wants to. Oh, there it is. In case you want to chime in on what. So there's here, Barack. Yeah.
If I may, as the mic heads there, just that example as well. I just want to get a feel. I want to assume that a good number of us have been to Koroga. Yes? Yes? The very last edition of Koroga, that exact situation happened at the exit as we were leaving. So just to make it clear that it's not something that happens in the CBD, in spaces where we feel that we are protected as well. It does happen. There is a man who was assaulting a woman, and a lot of us, and I use us very deliberately, a lot of us were walking by as this was happening. There are bouncers around. There are guys who are leaving. This was at the point of exit. The thing was over and we were leaving. Nothing. So it's not even just about it being a CBD. Even in this space here, unfortunately, entirely possible. I wouldn't be surprised if it's happened in the last week.
Hey. Hi guys. How you doing? Yeah, my name is Lynn Guge. So I wanna first thank you for the platform. It's amazing. I've never seen so many people together where we can curse and just, yes. Yeah, where people can curse and just say stuff, from deep down. Yeah, so so I want to go back to the first conversation you had, because you asked something important, and you asked when did all this start? When was it okay for men to feel like you can walk to a female and kill her? And I just want to pose this question to the men so that maybe they can answer, because this is what I'm struggling with. The people who are killing each other are almost of the same age. So you find a guy is maybe 27, he's killing a lady who is 27, But then when I go back to how we were raised, because I don't have brothers, I have cousins, and you go back to how we were raised, and this is not to make any excuse for the male behavior. I go back, and there were times when my parents would tell us, as a girl, don't let a man do this to you, If a man, hits you, walk away. Those are conversations I used to have with my mom or my aunt or even my grandma. But when I look back, the same conversations were not there with my male cousins. Like, was the conversation, or is the conversation open to the male figures? Like, of course, we are being told how to behave, but who is teaching these men how to behave as well, right? Because you have men killing women, right? And then on the other hand, you have like, there was a documentary that was done by BBC, and they said 4 males, especially in central Kenya, are committing suicide. So they don't know how to deal with their emotions. They suppress their emotions, and it comes out as anger, and they kill you. Because the question would be, so I don't make this any longer, are we having platforms, or are we having these discussions with the males as well? Because I think what I'm suffering from, and girl child, lazima tutetewe, because people feel like we were suppressed for a long time, right? But when you are teaching me how to behave when a guy hits me, who is teaching the guy not to hit a woman in the first place? And this is not to make any excuse for anyone. Are we having these conversations? Even you as men, when you sit down with your uncles, are you having this conversation? Do they tell you when a woman says no, it's a no? Stop being annoyed. Stop, forming wrinkles on your forehead when a woman tells you no, right? Exactly, right? And the women who are here, when you are having these conversations as women, are you also considering, like your brothers, if someone is having these conversations with them, and then maybe we can get the solution to the problem, right? Okay.
So the response to that, truth is no, right? I'm trying to remember the conversations I had about girls, women relationships. So I was in church for a good portion of my life, right? And the major thing we're told is don't have sex. In fact, no, legit. You're told it is going to spoil the purity, your soul, it will, all that rubbish, right? That's the extent of conversations you have around girls, right? It's stay away from them, keep a literal Christian distance from them. I don't even know what that means. And things like that.
Holy Spirit space.
Holy Spirit space. And these are real conversations, by the way.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so there's nothing beyond that, because later on in my life, right, this is not later on of 20 years ago. 3 years ago is when I started thinking about a lot of these things, right? When you start thinking about the fact that in terms of consent, you've been culpable in not respecting women's consent, right? You go back to times when you have called when you shouldn't have, right? And one of the biggest things that we think of sex, rape, consent as the physical aspect it sometimes shows itself as, but most times it won't reach that point, right? So you don't think of yourself as an aggressor because you're not physical, right? But you don't think of the texts you kept on sending, right? You don't think of the fact that you are inappropriate at a workplace, at school, people are inappropriate at church, right? Yes, even when you're walking, there are very many things we do, right? And it goes back to various things that, legitimately just go back to entitlement, right? When you hit on a girl, you expect that eventually she'll say yes, right? And it also goes back to like language used around it, right? People say, "Hey, umeka sport pesa, sure bet." Literally, these are, you go. But that's the exact language used, right? You took her out, "Hey, umeinvest vizuri, returns itakuwa lini." These are actual conversations had. It speaks the attitude we have, right? And this directly affects conversations we'd have about this, because the problem is that conversations about consent hit very hard. They hit very hard if it hits on things you have done, and I do not think there's a man alive who has not crossed boundaries of consent, right? But you don't want to talk about it, right? You don't want to look like a bad guy, but the truth is that every single guy has done it, right? I have had situations where I have gone beyond consent and been called out for it. You're really annoyed, right? This is a while back. You really annoyed at this woman. What is she telling me? And then afterwards, right? And sometimes the truth is that the truth will come to you a few months later. What the hell was I doing? That was disrespectful, right? And part of the reason you don't want to accept this conversation is because it directly affects you. Yes.
Yeah. So then that begs the question, where do you guys then learn about it? Like how to interact
At this
with
present
women?
moment?
Yeah.
At this
Because
present
there
moment?
was only the church
Yes.
foundation.
Yes.
So now, where you...
Actually, allow me to expand on
Yeah.
that. So there was church. Then there was Okay, let me now see what this crowd is like. Hands up if you consider yourself a millennial. Where? Or even the cat passed. Anyone who is below millennial? No? So everyone above me, fantastic. So a lot of us then grew up in the era when the big budget Hollywood movies were big. Your Rambos, I don't know which other one. That's the one. Listen, that's the one. Okay, that's jazz. It's jazz. Okay, judge me. I don't care. So it was this period in time where the definition of being a man was you're this hard human who is my way or no way. And therefore that becomes so that's one. And then there is, so another cultural thing that happened around that point, and we enacted it a lot as children, was this wonderful thing called wrestling. Yes? Wrestling is one thing. You win or you don't. And we always looked up to the winners, your Undertakers, Stone Cold Steve Austin, yes? The Rock. You know, the winners were the ones that we would look up to. And what that taught us was, and when you think about it as a role play scenario, when you come back and you're in school on Wednesday, because it used to be Tuesday, you're in school on Wednesday, or you come back home on Wednesday and you're reenacting it. When you're brothers, you have to argue and decide who is the Rock and who is the other person, whoever the person was that ultimately lost. And life is always within those two prisms. Think again, Rambo, wrestling, whatever it is that you pick, that were cultural things at that particular point. You're either on top or nothing at all. Our definition of being a man then at the same time was also a similar thing. It was a case of you're either the person that people, and to this day, unfortunately, that is true. You're either the person, the man that people look up to, either because you are a big CEO, you are a millionaire, you have rolled in with a big car, you have to have something that that is known about you. So you always have to be on top. The conversation on how nuanced life is, on how complicated life is, on the fact that you will likely lose more than you win, that doesn't happen at all. Fortunately, I use that word very deliberately, it happens a lot with women. And that is where I feel a bit of the emotional maturity comes into play. Because once you understand that life isn't always going to go your way, then you start understanding a lot of the complexities about it. You start understanding that I will not necessarily win in every verbal confrontation. I will not win in every place where I'm put against someone else. I don't have to win when I'm in a group of people. That there is a thing called compromise. We don't know compromise. What is a compromise? What is that? I don't know what that is. So that conversation, to answer your question, is not happening. To answer your question as well, it's not happening. We're not being exposed to the fact that life is this complicated bowl of spaghetti thrown in with cheese and meat and da. We just thought life is nyama choma, full stop. Throw it, grill it, remove it, done.
That's a good life, really.
So let me...
And another thing I'd like to add, and this one is a bit sensitive, but it's also a fact. Some of us, I'm not going to ask for any statistics, but some of us grew up in households where our fathers were violent towards our mothers. And I grew up in such a household. I write about it from time to time, so it's no secret. And my mom would tell me not to marry a man like she did. Yeah, the older I got, we were able to have such conversations, and she'd tell me, Lwile, don't marry a man like this. But did she have the same conversation with my brother? I don't know. Did she ever tell him, the way he treats me, don't treat me? I don't know. In fact, I should find out actually, because Lord knows my father never told my brother the way I treat your mom is wrong. Yeah, so that's also a big problem when you grow up seeing that, even if a part of you knows it's wrong, I think maybe when you get caught up in the emotions and everything, I don't know what it is, but it also plays a part.
There's something else. Are there someone?
Hello. Hi, my name is Lynette Kamau, and I have a question. Hi. I have a question and a comment. The question is, because I remember around January with a femicide discussion, my pain was, why don't most men call out bad behavior? And by bad behavior, I don't look at when a guy has committed murder. I look at it from the catcalling. I look at it from when you objectify a woman, when you call her or make all this assumptions around her and why you want to pursue her or not. So why don't men within circles, even if you're a good person, why don't you call out bad behavior among your fellow friends and your men? That's one. Two, I see this conversation as an opportunity for us to have with men in our lives and women in our lives as well. So if you have a son, if you have your husband, your brother, whoever, and your father, to really sit down and have these conversations, because I think it cuts across all generations, regardless of a sector you look at. And the issue has been, women are not looked at as people who contribute to society, but as people you can take something from. It's always you pursue, you conquer, and then that's it. There's no other story. And so we have to fight every time to try and bring out a different narrative. And it would be much easier if men who recognize this aspect of women also stood out and showed this other different narrative. Yeah.
Do you guys call out guys in your spaces? Mariga.
We want to hear.
Are you?
What level
You
of
guys
language are
call
you
out-
allowed in a podcast? So
No, do you call out men in your spaces?
I do. I started to, but not always have. And when you do, you're told you're chasing pussy, right? That's the exact wording. You're told you're looking for cookie points. That's exactly how this reaction always goes, right? You're told you're one of those male feminists. And that thing is said so badly, you'd assume you've been called a really bad thing. Where you'd assume like you've done a terrible thing when you do. Because the problem is that a lot of, I think this was said by Binti, but she said a lot of masculinity, yes, Aisha, a lot of masculinity is based around reinforcement, right? It's held by reinforcing some of these ideas and ideals. So the problem is that calling out someone for things like these, one, you face, and the truth is cowardly, you face the risk of blowback by your own men, right? Because men many times want to uphold their status quo. I was on a morning show on Friday morning on Citizen TV. We're talking about fatherhood. And we're asked what real men should do. And I said, real men should hold each other accountable. Do you know the panel stopped? And this is a panel of, it was 8 people. And all of you, like, what? Yes. The one thing I thought would not actually be a problem, a politician, a somebody, people stopped and said, calling me out as who? Right? Because we're talking about the fact that when things like when men are absent fathers, I'm like, you should call them out. They're like, no, maybe you don't know. I was like, no, you always know when your boy is an absent father, right? But you don't. And the truth is that people are just too cowardly to call it out because one, it means a couple of things, right? One, it means that if these are the regular friends that you're hanging out with, eventually you might stop having to hang around these men, right? The truth is that men in many situations are not willing to pay the cost for what it requires, right? The cost for you would be death. For me, would be nowhere close. I would face a social cost, right? And that's what many men are not willing to do because when you do that, you're scared of one, the blowback, 2, you're scared of being locked out of these circles, 3, you're scared that, and in many ways, you're scared that in the ways in which you're holding people accountable, that somehow this will come back to bite you especially for things that these boys have let you get away with. And so the truth is that you just don't pay the cost. So it isn't, men should do this more often, because the truth is that if you had 20-30% of Kenyan men standing up against femicide, it would stop, right? Literal math, revolutions are started by 3.5% of a population. You don't even need, achana na 20, 30. If 3.5% of men in Kenya decided that femicide should stop, it would. Yet, but 3.5% of men in Kenya would have to decide that cost is worth it, that they'll be willing to pay the price, the ostracization, that willing to face the humiliation that men do humiliate each other a lot, right? Men don't only humiliate women. Men humiliate men into behaving like them. That's how the whole system operates around it. So you need very many men in your life willing to pay these prices, willing to unlearn things that hold them together, right? Because when you talk about calling out sexism, right? Sexism goes everything across the scale, right? You'd have to call yourself out for those jokes which you know are not very appropriate, right? The things you call locker room talk. You'd have to call yourself out on that. And so you holding someone else accountable means they hold you accountable. And many times a lot of this is growth that people are not willing to make.
I'm just wondering why there are no men. Yeah. Speaking.
So my name
There's
is
one? I can't see. Okay.
So my name is Conrad Omwenga, and I'm happy to be here. Yeah. So the issue is first. So the issue is first, we men are not empowered enough to handle ladies. You know, very true. Very true.
Allow me to come back to that one.
Yes.
Just let's put a pin on that one.
Okay. Yeah. So in short, us men, we were not taught enough how to handle women when we were young. You see, like you can see when ladies were young, they could even go and sit with the mom, and like just like you have said, you were taught by your mom that your dad didn't handle well your mother. You see, like for us, we haven't been taught that. It's very true, and that perception that men are tough. The perception that men are supposed to handle their issues alone without sharing them to their friends or their parents. You see, I think that's the problem.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Just, I'll be kind. No, I'll be very kind of her, Jen. No, it's very true. So I'm just going to talk about the last part where men are supposed to handle their problems alone. I get that. That's very true, right? But then again, so the reality is, it's not just the fact that you were not taught. It's the fact that there is an inability to be teachable, right? So a lot about me as a woman being domesticated was taught to me by a man, right? My mother was never domesticated. My mother just had a vision of giving me a dope name and thinking that I'm going to take over the world and etc., etc., right? So my dad taught me all the feminist things, and I'm using feminist very, very loosely here. So the feminine things of cooking and being nice and, you know, and all that, right? So then there's the first question of why are you not teachable as a person, right? And why are you not able to get to this place where you're introspecting? Because that's also a very, very big terminology in men's vocabulary that absolutely does not exist. Men don't introspect completely. This is why you will meet a married man and tell you they just married a little, you know? They do not introspect. You know what I mean? They will not, because it is the same way they will tell you, but you'll tell them, but excuse me, you're talking to me, you're a married man, and they say, but not to you. You know what I mean? I'm married to someone else. Let that be their problem. You just focus on the fact that I'm talking to you. So then there are those conversations. And I understand about that. So the underlying question is the fucking patriarchy. Right? Because patriarchy gives men, and I say this because there are levels of patriarchs, right? So there are men who patriarch on a level of power and influence because they have money and they have access, right? So the Mercedes-Benz driving, and I'm not vilifying them, I'm just saying with that status comes another level of patriarchy. And those patriarchs completely belittle the men who don't drive anything, right? So the patriarchy that gives men power for the fact that they just are men and have a dick will dehumanize them and expect them to deal with their issues alone. And I say this as somebody who has no sisters, and I completely revolve around men who are patriarchs. And every day I call them out on their fucking patriarchy, and I tell them, I can't help you until you help me fight the patriarchy. Because you want to be a human being when it is necessary for you. But you want me to be a human being every day because it benefits you. Pick a struggle, right? So then there's the fact that and I say we, meaning men, can men just have an introspection conference where you just sit down and ask yourself, me as a person, why do I get gratification from the fact that I am described or respected because I have material things? That I'm absolutely a bullshit person in character. But because I look good, I'm in a suit, I speak the good English, then I am a man. Does that make you a person, right? That's the thing. Like, can men have an introspection conference, honestly, to just talk about feelings and understand that feelings and all these things they want to have, which is great because life is lived in the gray. It's not lived in the black and white. Life is lived in the gray. So they want to exist in the gray when it's convenient and when they're not working and when the things that define them in the world are falling apart. Then they want to run and be like, oh my God, I need emotions. No, can we fight the patriarchy? Because that's the problem. And I understand the fact that there are also men who were raised by women who didn't turn out great. And there are men who were raised by men who turned out great. So it is not about you being raised by a certain gender. It is the fact that the person who raised you was intentional about making you see a woman as a full human being. That's it. Because we've seen men who are raised by their mothers who are absolutely horrible people. You're just like, where in the world did this fucker come from? Right? They understand nothing about nothing. And then there are some who are just completely awesome. And I'm not saying all of them are bad, right? But then it is understanding that the person who raises you has to be intentional about the fact that, do you see women as people? Do you see them as people who deserve respect? Do you see them not also as your sister? Because I have problems, eh? When someone says, oh, you know, that could have been my sister. Wow, that means the person who is not your sister, right? The fact that I have to make it personal for me to care about you is a problem. If I walk into a conversation, and I say this to men, if you walk into a conversation and say, I support women because they are our mothers, they are our grandmothers, they raised us, oh my God, fuck it. They are not. I am not your sister, I am not your auntie, but you know what? I am a human being. And because of that, can you treat me like one? I don't have to be your sister. Because that means my brothers or my cousins cannot protect Adele when she's being violated, cannot protect you while you're being violated. Because what? She's not her sister, brothers, do whatever. No, you cannot have conversations about humanity pegged on how close or how related you are to a person. I care about so many people, right? I care about so many human beings. But it's not because I know them. I don't. Me, I have one brother. Right? But I see that they are people and they deserve respect and they deserve dignity and they should be treated well. They don't have to be related to me. So all of that comes from introspection. So if you're introspecting, can we just talk about the fact that the patriarchy that gives you power is the same patriarchy that's trying to kill you into mental conversations? Oh, yeah.
All right.
Could I just respond?
Okay.
I feel like most times we understand power upwards, right? We understand people oppressing us from the top. We can't see it very easily. Because one response, if I were to turn my brother there at the back, what he's saying, if I say I'm a white man and I wasn't taught how to deal with black men very well, and that's why I'm racist, right? That's the exact same thing that you'd be doing, but for women, right? We might not have had a lot of this education, and truthfully be told a lot of it didn't have, but that's not an excuse, right? You and I have to take responsibility for the things that we've done which are wrong, right? And a lot of times when you're attacking a system, attack on a system feels like an attack on self, attack on person, attack on personality and who we are, right? So yes, we might not have had all that, but at no point in this world does excuse what we have done, right? And at no point does excuse the fact that we need to do better. And so that's the response that I would give.
Allow me to jump on really fast because I'm very aware that time may be a factor here. There's a reason why I said let's put a pin in that empowerment thing, and I love what you said, Scheaffer. This is a thing I do. The people closest to me know that there's a thing I do at minimum once every 2 weeks. When I can, once every week, where for a period in time over the weekend or when I have time, I completely shut everything down and spend time with myself. Yeah? And I do that very deliberately because one, I want to grow as a human being. That's constantly my mission in life. I'm always learning, I'm always growing. I want to do that at every point in time. Growth and becoming a better person, to me, means that I have to be able to look in the mirror, look at that person who's looking back at me and say, hey, you're ugly. And you're ugly because 1, 2, 3. You're ugly because this week you did this, or you treated someone this way, or you did a particular thing that had this particular impact. I have to look at myself, and it has to happen frequently. I have to look at myself and understand that my actions have an impact. That what I choose to do, choose, I'm coming back to the empowerment thing. What I choose to do has an impact. Now, and this is something that I have learned, again, from a woman. Because women, and I feel like I'm very open with this, I admire a lot about women. There's the friendships you have, and then there's the friendship you have with yourself, where you're able to sit with yourself and have a conversation with yourself. So whether that includes other people around you or with yourself, you're having that conversation with yourself. If I've lied, tell me. Yeah? And then, as you are having that conversation with yourself, you're able to pinpoint this is, and this is where the conversation now gets a little bit twisted and everything. You're able to pinpoint and say, this action had this repercussion. This caused this. This made me do this. And that's where now the other complexities of, because you dressed this way, this happened, da 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 da. I'm not going to go into that because that's a whole separate thing. But because you have that conversation, then unfortunately, we've exploited that loophole and made it your responsibility. Whole other conversation. Let me keep it to the point. You do that a lot, and it has allowed you over the decades to grow as human beings. It's why you've been able to fight for what you believe is right, to fight for yourself, your dignity as a human being. We don't do that as often as men. Power comes from understanding where you are currently. Empowerment comes from, this is where I am today. This is the reality of who I am and where I am stationed today. And therefore, I need to make the following steps to have a better future for myself and for other people around me tomorrow and in the days to come. Introspection. We don't sit with ourselves. We don't take time to pause and think, where am I today? Who am I today? What am I doing today? And if I don't understand that for myself now, I have no hope of becoming a better human being. And therefore, I have no hope of empowering myself or anyone around me. Where am I? Who am I today? Do we understand that? Not quite.
Like, there is no escaping this. Like, our body is political and it's a battle zone where men come to fight, where when men come to win wars, literally.
I was not involved in this conversation. First, I can't be anyone. But secondly, this money, I didn't know there were terms.
A lot of women are not asked out. Like, unashukia tu siku ingine tu ati, hey, this is my girlfriend. You're like, alas. I have been. She's here. I am.
A lot of times it takes you to be, stop being stupid. Just stop. She doesn't want you.
There's a line, and it's very clear, that choices have consequences for women, and we end up dead.
And therefore, when I am rejected, all hell breaks loose.